Josh, this is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but a whimper.
The US median age for giving birth hits 30. Well, let's just go back in time and let's see what happened in the 1800s. In the 1800s, the typical American woman bore an average of 7 children. She had her first child around the age of 23. Well, let's go to the next century. The average number of children had fallen to 3.5 in the 1900s. So let's compare that. Women were birthing on average 7 children, and they started at the age of 23. Now, in the 1900s, the average number of children had fallen to about 3.5. But what is it now? Even back in the early 1960s, it was around 2.3 to 2.4, which is the magic number that we would need to sustain an increasing population. But now
Absolutely.
in 2020, it is 1.93. We go from women having 7 children on average to less than 2. What is that going to mean for the future of humanity if the massive amounts of productivity that can be done per person is decreasing because we just simply have less people on Earth? And we can see these trends of the median age of motherhood is increasing at the same time. It's now 30 when, I mean, it was 24 in 1970 and 23 in the 1800s. What probed my curiosity for this was a video that I saw on one of those short clips where there was this woman who was like 20 years old who was having a baby, and she was happy. And she was just getting scolded by hundreds of thousands of people, literally saying how wrong it was and how immature she is, how this is one of the most cruel things that you could do. Why are you not getting an abortion? And I'm just thinking to myself that this makes absolutely no sense, because if this was back in the day, it would be extraordinarily normal for her to have a baby at that age. And I'm not saying it is right or wrong. I'm just looking at the trends as our society is going to, where it is now a sin to have children at a young age, or some people think it's even a sin to have children at all because they think the population should actually be shrinking, which is one of the most bizarre theories I have ever heard.
Well, like I said, Josh, when you go to school, they put those square caps on people's round heads when they graduate, which I think is always a testament to how the thinkings work, but whatever. Going back to that, so the two things I would say on that front is that virtue always shames vice. And I suspect that you have a lot of people who deep down inside know that they're, I don't want to say committing a sin, but they're not necessarily doing what they should be doing. And the last thing they want to do is be reminded of it. My favorite go-to example is a fat person at McDonald's ordering a Diet Coke thinking they're eating healthy. Well, the last thing that they want to do if there's this fat ass at McDonald's ordering something is, see a thin person there, because just the virtue of the person being thin or whatever, right? Having, a healthy body, etc., will shame them. And what they really want to do is they want to be able to eat and indulge whatever, hedonistic pleasures they can indulge in without feeling guilty about it. So I think the same thing goes true in this thing, where women, particularly I think modern women, have been sold a bill of goods, basically saying they can have it all. Look, you can have the career, you can have all this other stuff, you can have the family, you can have the kids, etc. But the reality is that, well, no, you really can't. You have to make choices. Now, I certainly think people should be able and should be free to choose. I'm not trying to take that away. But what I would say is you want to accurately disclose the cost of these various choices in there. Example, if you want to smoke cigarettes, by all means smoke cigarettes, but you don't have a right to engage all the organs of society to delude you into thinking that smoking cigarettes is healthy, and the cigarettes need to be clearly labeled, you can't sell to kids, etc. The second comment I would say is that just as vice is shamed by virtue, people will sand crab. So in other words, the joke is that if you see someone who's trying to escape from the pit of despair and the pit of lies or whatever, right? All the other people in the pit will reach up and try to pull them back down. And this is what sand crabs will do, right? If they see one crab escaping, because they don't want to have to face the truth, or part of them will have to face the truth that, like, wait a minute, they're doing something wrong. Personal story, I've got a very good friend. She worked for a Big Four accounting firm or whatever, right? And through her mid-20s, married very well. And then basically she wanted to have a kid. And she had a kid, really loved it, was totally ecstatic to be a mom. And she shared with me, like, Justin, I was really upset that this alternative was hidden from me, because, like, I find this so fulfilling. Anyway, she went back to work, whatever, right? And then eventually quit after 2 years because she got sick and tired of working in that thrill. And I will add too, by the way, they kept trying to hire her back. They kept throwing more and more money at her. And eventually she just said, like, look, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't want the money. I don't need the money. I just want to go home and be a mom. Anyways, went home, had another kid. So hat tip to her. And, like, I mean, obviously this is, I think, more of a female issue than a male issue, but just as one human being to another human being, I worry that there's a whole cadre of women that are going to time out, hit the wall, and realize they've been sold a bill of goods, and realize that many options I thought they would have available are no longer as available or practical as they thought they would be. And it's going to be messy, Josh.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not scolding the fact that women are now having their first child at the age of 30, because I personally don't want to have kids till I'm in my 30s either. But these trends have to be looked at and observed, because if this continues, I mean, what's it going to be like in 2021? I mean, 2100. Are we going to be having our first child at 35? Are we going to be having an average of one child per person? When is it going to be that not even every single person on average is having a child? I personally don't think that day will come, just because the way of human hardwiring. But we've been trying to change that. But that is a very, very difficult field to change human evolution, because how else would a small portion of humans, I mean, how would we go from a few thousand humans to billions of billions if we didn't have an internal hard drive that was just making you and forcing you to want to reproduce? It is in our DNA to try and reprocreate. But if there's ever, let's say, a drastic measure where women can no longer get pregnant, through whatever means, if it is a certain medicine, or if it is because we've hit our clock, or if there is just a social engineered way where people stop having children, that is going to have drastic impacts on especially women's lives. Because I personally am not old enough to understand this, but I've been told, and it is digged deep into my memory, a conversation I had with someone who has run many, many businesses. And he said every single woman he's ever hired, they would all be kick-ass. They would all be wanting to work as hard as possible. But then they get to around 30, 33, 34, 35, and that brain where they want to work as hard as possible shifts to where I want to settle down and I want to have a child. It is the DNA, the hardwiring in us that he said he saw time and time again. And then these women would have the children, and then their frame where they'd want to work is now their focus is 100% on that child, because that is what human evolution is made for.
Exactly.
So what is going to happen if women cannot or are not having children, but that need to procreate and to take care of that offspring is still there? I mean, it is such a perverse I don't even know what's going to happen.
Josh, I can tell you what's going to happen, because our godfather Kevin Samuel called it out time and time again. Buy a dog, die alone. Woof woof. That was one of his go-tos.
Like I think it's so much worse than that. I mean, ask your parents, your mother. I'll do this after we make this video. I'll ask my mother, like, what would your life be like now if you did not have children, or you were unable to, or you waited way too long? I mean, I'm truly scared for the future of, it's like, men, I think they can get away with it, because I mean, most men, they can avoid the lack of children with a career.
Oh no, it's deeper. It's deeper than that. Men can live alone. Men, if push comes to shove, men can live by themselves.
But
Women cannot.
You can't even get mad at that, because men are more driven by objects and things, where women are infinitely more driven by people.
Yeah.
And that's just the way life is.
Yeah, the sky's blue and water is wet. Josh, the other thing I would say too is that, I don't know if you saw it, but there was an interesting movie called Children of Men that came out, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. Now I can't remember when, but in it, basically the entire human race had gone barren. And I kind of wonder if, the people behind the people who are behind the people that are behind the scenes are kind of, giving us a nod and a wink of what's to come. But you mentioned a certain therapeutical treatment, or alluded to it a little earlier, and I'm very curious to see what happens there. But let's not get ahead on our worrying quite yet.
So if these trends continue, what will be made of the Earth? Will the Earth end in a whimper and not a bang?